Hey guys, welcome to Tech Bytes. In this landmark first video, we'll be reviewing the Amazon Basics Cat-6 Ethernet cable. So my reason for reviewing this particular product is that it's easy to overlook Ethernet cables as a physical component that you have to be mindful of in your network. So I'm also going to use this review as a platform to talk a little bit about what Cat-6 means and give you a few things to look out for when you're ordering a cable. That way, if you're not an IT professional and you're just considering this product for your home network, you'll be able to start thinking about the things that make this one cable different from another. The Amazon Basics Cat-6 Ethernet cable comes in 6 sizes, and the 25-foot cable is being shown here for reference. Reviews of this product are positive, with the cable scoring between 4 and 5 stars on average. In general, it is an Ethernet cable, and like I said earlier, I think most folks aren't too critical and are likely to give it a good score as long as the cable works well enough for them. But if you really want to choose what's best for you, there are a few things to keep in mind, which some reviewers mentioned, as we'll see here. Negative reviews of the cable fall into 4 major categories, the first of which is, in my mind, the most important by far, although it's a pretty simple one. The plastic around the connector makes it difficult or sometimes even impossible to connect cables side by side in a switch or home router. I was able to connect the cable in 2 adjacent ports in my Linksys AC1750 router/modem. However, there are reports of people who tried to fill a switch with a whole bunch of these cables and had a lot of trouble. You can see here that the Amazon Basics cable is bulkier than the cable I'm comparing it to around the connector. I'd consider this white cable to be pretty standard as far as Ethernet cables go in that regard. The second complaint that some users have, and this is where we're getting into what Cat-6 really means, the second complaint is that the cable underperforms for a Cat-6 cable. I've not tested this myself, but it is important to note that the product description for this cable says it transmits at speeds up to 1 gig or 1000 megabits per second. While run-of-the-mill Cat-6 cables do transmit at 1000 megabits per second for longer lengths of cable, shorter lengths should be able to operate at 10 gigs per second. Being that these Amazon Basics cables are only sold at 50 feet max, they should all be short enough to transmit at these higher speeds. But a few reviewers report that their cables did not even transmit at 1 gig per second when tested. However, please keep in mind that if you don't work professionally in network infrastructure and are just using these cables for home use, speeds above 1 gigabit are not really going to be a concern for you, as the vast majority of home routers and network devices currently only transmit at speeds of up to 1 gig anyway. Depending on the placement of the cable, the hardware you're using, and your residential internet plan, your needs could be less than that, and most reviewers were not as critical as the ones who actively monitored the transmission speed of the cable. These less critical folks seemed satisfied with the cable and did not appear to consider it to be a bottleneck in their network. As a footnote, the cable is advertised as having a 250 megahertz bandwidth, which is what is to be expected for Cat-6 cables. The third and perhaps most common complaint by reviewers, though this one was still very rare, was that the cable either failed after being used for a period of time or just did not work at all out of the box. What I have to say on this is that electronics are susceptible to failure or eventual performance degradation, even Ethernet cables from time to time. One thing that can increase the likelihood of a cable failure is if the cable is bent or pinched excessively. This is more likely if the cable has poor strain relief, and by strain relief I'm referring to how flexible a cable is near the connector, where it can be easily twisted and damaged. I show an example of that here with the Amazon Basics cable, as well as the white cable I compared it to earlier. The fourth complaint I read a few times was that the cable shipped was shorter than what was advertised. This was a pretty weird one. I did measure my cable and it came out to exactly 25 feet, which is what I was expecting. In summary, I would recommend against buying many of these cables for a project in an enterprise network, as there are issues with the bulk around the connector and possibly some issues with transmission speeds. But if you're using these in your home network, you're probably fine. Okay, thanks guys. Have a good one, and I'll see you next time.